Okay, we're gonna start off, and I do know we have there are people out on field trips and people probably taking off back west, but nonetheless, introductions. We've got Elizabeth Ruth with the hospital district. This is all part of our partnership. Jim Taylor with the Skagit Trail Builders, the executive director. They can further introduce themselves when they come up to speak, and then Joseph Shea, the operations and lands manager for the county. And just to give you some background, this is the Northern States hospital grounds. It was once the hospital grounds, which had a working farm. So you can see the campus here, and then there's a creek to the east, and it divides 726 acres of parklands from the campus. So there's a couple hundred acres of the old hospital, which is now managed by the Skagit Port, and then the parklands. And then there's also some city of Sedro-Woolley parklands as well. Just want to go a little bit through the history, and I can't talk too much about the history before just letting all of you know how important this property was to the indigenous community prior to it being a hospital grounds. This is adjacent to the Upper Skagit Native tribe, the indigenous tribal community, and it was an important tributary. Hanson Creek and Red Creek come through this area, important tributaries of the Skagit River. So at that time, these creeks were chock full of salmon, and that there was an issue with that, but we did some renovations a few years ago, an alluvial fan, and we're working hard to bring back the salmon into this area as well. But the indigenous community were along this riparian and the Skagit riparian. So after we get into some of the farm and the hospital lands, and the hospital patients were, I don't know how many were there, but the hospital was built in 1912. The Olmsted Brothers, landscape architects, pioneers of the landscape architect world, were the ones that put the design together. And not only was the design created to help with flow through the hospital and from the hospital to the farmlands, where patients got their therapy and had a role to play each and every day, and were put out in nature to heal some of the issues that they had going on. But they also had paths into other areas, and Art Tuftes, who's here, I think one time said and read that they were given the freedom to walk around the campus, build forts if they wanted to. So there was a lot of freedom provided the patients to get out in nature. And that's important, because what we're trying to accomplish here with what we're doing, and we'll get into that with Beth, is to have an opportunity to have a healing campus again. That this will be a park where we're trying to get people back into nature through a Parks RX program. So Elizabeth will get to that a little bit later. So 1912, the hospital opened, and although they did some electrotherapy and some lobotomies, the primary purpose of this hospital was to get people outside and to take care of orchards, and to take care of farm animals, and to take care of canning operations, or whatever it was at the farm. And they were so successful, they not only self-sustained the hospital here, but they provided food for the penitentiary and the Western State Hospital. So it was quite a successful farming operation here. And part of it was built on the efficiency of the Olmsted Brothers, who created the housing and did everything in a way that made the farm state-of-the-art. You can see in some of the prior pictures, it was a Spanish colonial design, so quite impressive for a community such as Sedro-Woolley, where it was a logging camp. So for this to be going in 1912 with all those clay roofs and the bright red roofs, pretty amazing place, and really attracted a lot of people to come up and see it. So what we're trying to accomplish now in reconnecting the old hospital to the farmlands, and that hasn't been easy. The reconnection process, the hospital was owned by General Administration, the State Department of General Administration. We acquired the park with RCO money in the 70s after the hospital closed in 73. The DNR had the land for a short time, so we were able to purchase that property, but it sat pretty idle for a number of years. And in about year 2002, 2001, we put in a parking lot, and we didn't expect this park to become as popular as it was. And cross-country meets, suddenly there was tons of people wanting to get out there, and there weren't even trails, so people started creating social trails. There was trails around some of the old farm buildings, but really, and animal trails, but people started getting out there and creating these trails, which we later utilized for the purpose of getting people into the bridges and to the old paths where the patients used to enjoy. The bridges had collapsed, so we had to put in new footbridges. And it wasn't until the Port of Skagit took over the hospital grounds that they were accepting of the reconnection. So playing the long game is so important. You know, we had a vision, slowly we got there. GA didn't want to play with us, but the Port of Skagit were very welcoming, and I know their commissioners were very excited about reconnecting the park. We created we did an alluvial fan project to bring back fish habitat. That was one of the first projects we did. We started a parking lot with trails and main corridors and arteries, and then we went after a grant to do a veterans plaza near that parking lot so that the veterans could be recognized, the veterans of Skagit County. And that's been hugely popular, and another way for healing, and another way that fit into what we were trying to accomplish with the old mental hospital and those retrofits. The cross country, we've got fun runs going out there, a lot of good things going on out there, and Joseph will talk about some of the current amenities and some of the current challenges that we have going on out there. Now, we're not going to save some of these old buildings. You can see what kind of shape they're in, but we can save the architecture. And when we build a new, whether it's a kiosk or a picnic shelter, we're bringing back some of the cupolas and some of the features that these buildings have. And we've salvaged the wood and some of the materials, and we're keeping them in place so that we can use them with benches and different things. So pretty incredible pictures. Here's some of the waterways that were contained, and there was some obviously a big cattle operation and dairy operation going on. But the amazing thing is these paths and trails that were utilized were grown over, and we didn't know where they were until we got the expertise of Art Tufte, who's in the room, who was working with the trail builders, that found some of that infrastructure and was able to create these trails, somewhat connecting the dots, he says, because you would find infrastructure, you'd find where an old bridge was, you would find an old hydrant along these trails, and started to figure out this old trail system from some of the old Olmsted architectural maps. And pretty amazing, because I didn't really believe it myself when Art said he found this, and then I got out there and saw this infrastructure that was in place, and you know, it was quite amazing. And I'm getting to my 10 minutes, so I'm going to pass this on here in a sec, but I would like, you know, if you guys want to read more about the history, there is a book called Under the Red Roof by Mary McGoffin. I would invite you to read that book. It's got a lot of great information. And again, we're trying to, what we're trying to accomplish here is really come back full circle and bring kids into the park and give reasons to kids to get away from their screens and enjoy the park. And we're doing that in a variety of ways. Almost Outdoor Project is a Hispanic group that's getting out there and doing education. We've had the Skagit Conservation Group. This trail builders have been enormously successful in bringing in kids to work on the trails. So it's by a lot of different methods that we're trying to open the park up to a larger demographic and to make sure that people are getting the emotional and the socio-emotional support, the mental support, and the physical support that the trail systems will offer. So thank you, and I'll pass it on to Joseph.
Hello, everyone. So yeah, I'm Joseph Shea. I'm the Operations Lands Manager for Skagit County Parks. I've been doing this for this is my second year here at Parks. But interesting enough, I've been in Sedro-Woolley since I was 3 years old. Moved over from Prosser, Washington, kind of somewhat nearby here. But going through high school, sneaking out to the park here in the middle of the night, getting into a bunch of trouble, and then now being in my position to try to keep kids from tagging the buildings is definitely a blast in my head there. But it's very nice to have a part of this legacy, to be able to help our community and really get this park going. Graduated in 2010 from Sedro-Woolley, and so Brian mentioned, in the early 2000s it became county owned, and that's kind of when it started becoming popular for a lot of kids my age. And so seeing it improve to its state's been really, really cool to see. But just kind of going off some of the landscape architects, Brian kind of mentioned the Olmsted and kind of the old styling of the buildings. I think it would be a Spanish architecture in some ways. A lot of that we're trying to incorporate into our kiosk designs. Also, you'll see, I'll go through a couple slides with our barns, the old farm structures, trying to preserve those. They've been built in many different generations and different architectures, and trying to preserve that and kind of keep that feel. If you haven't heard, and we haven't mentioned it yet, this was on a Ghostbusters or a ghost show quite a few years ago, and it is very popular for being a ghost place, so we do get that as well in our barns quite a bit, so very fun. So this is a recent building we had to work on. So since I came in about 2 years ago, we went through and we really had to look at some of these buildings, on the top right, the top left of the four pictures, that's kind of the cannery area. It's just been taken over by blackberries, and we really had to kind of come in and see which one of these buildings are we actually going to be able to renovate and restore to the best of our ability, which ones are posing too much of a safety risk for people. People coming in and tearing wood off, you take any more pieces of wood off of this barn, it's going to fall on you. So at a certain point, we did have to come in and push that down, but we were able to salvage a lot of these old growth, raw cut timber boards. And so making new barn doors to help seal and protect some of these old buildings from weather, using them for other structures, bridges, signs, kiosks, anything like that in the future is kind of the hope, since they are quite a rare lumber to find. Old rough cut lumber is 3 inches thick. It lasts forever. It has a lot of history in itself. And so trying to preserve some of that, but also just get some of these buildings out from underneath the brambles of blackberries. A lot of us, we let the blackberries go, and we kind of have to sometimes as land managers. It's not a huge priority in the invasive world, and it's just too much to manage in some of our properties. But for these, especially these buildings, just freeing them up and making it so we can maintain them, that's something that we've been really focusing on as of late. So just trying to keep the buildings standing as long as we can, so people coming into our parks can observe what it was like there, but then also addressing some of those safety concerns. Brian also mentioned our Veterans Community Plaza. This is the coolest thing I could have came into my job. It was a month and a half in, and we got a opening ceremony for this plaza. We had old World War II planes flying over, a bunch of good speeches and comments, and really cool plaza we put in. But if you look on the right side, we have all these nameplates, and so that's nameplates that people of our community can come and get one for their partner, their wife, husband, what have you, who may have served or is actively serving, and they can kind of get them a plaque, a little token for their service. Also, you can kind of see there's a little whiteboard there. That's kind of just talking about some veterans' stories, about just their perspectives and viewpoints of just being in war and what that was like. And so these are kind of boards that we change throughout the year or throughout the years with new stories of new vets and kind of cycle those through. And it's become a very, very popular spot for us. We started with, I think, 4 or 8 of these nameplates, and now we took all of our additional benches out and installed all of the new nameplates. So there's a couple hundred names that can be put in there. So it's been a really, really cool opportunity for us. But if you look at that gazebo there with the blue S, or the white S, white and blue, you can kind of see that cupola on top, keeping that architecture on our new buildings to kind of keep that old styling, but also provide new structures and opportunities for everyone. So very happy with this. Hopefully we can keep this going. We also added a host to our property, or a camp host, and so they're able to keep an eye on the park day and night, make sure that it's being used in the manner it needs to be, but also being there to address guests and everything. I really liked listening to the presentation earlier about ambassadors, and that's very similar to how we use our hosts. It's just to tell people about the park so they know how to best use our facilities. Okay, so we haven't really gotten to the metrics of our park, but it's about 800 acres, so it's pretty big. There's a lot of amenities throughout the whole entire park and serving a lot of different groups. We have our trail builders and our trails serving multi-use horses, people, bikes. And then you also have, in our grass areas, you have this whole entire disc golf course, which is a statewide recognized course. They have events there with hundreds of people coming to play disc golf. If you told me this was going to be the sport 10 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that, but it's very popular, and I'd say it's probably one of the biggest drivers for our park of people coming. And we have some good metrics on that with their disc golf apps that they use for scoring their games, similar to golfers and everything. But you can kind of see how this can be a problem for us managing, though, because we have people throwing discs, playing a game, they got a course going on, maybe there's a tournament going on. Then we have these bike riders, we also have people riding their horses around, we have ADA designated services. And so really balancing all of those needs, it gets pretty difficult at times. And so we have a lot of good groups we work with, though. This gentleman, Cole, from the Bellingham Disc Golf Group, I think it is. They run a lot of the disc golf events there. We have Dean Taylor's a local guy who works with the Sedro-Woolley school district. He sets up all of the cross-country meets through the school, and so a lot of those community partners setting up a lot of those logistics with the community events really takes it off our staff, so we can focus on just keeping the park pristine, and we have all those volunteers doing a lot of great work for us, organizing those people. So really cool aspect of our park, although it can be very contentious. You know, disc golf, they don't necessarily like trees, because with trees grow in the middle of their course and block holes and everything. And then we also have environmental groups that we have a bittern, one of these bird species that we have to address and make sure we're not cutting down their grasses, their trees, their habitats. And so very, very fun thing to balance there. So I'll go into the next, and this kind of gets into my larger part of what I have to focus as the lands manager for this property, or our properties in general. Is large part of where we're trying to focus is wildlife mobility. So this was an old farm. There's a lot of old fence lines still established in blackberry thickets that really limit wildlife ability to move through our property. And so removing some of these old limiting structures, and it's also dangerous for our equipment, our brush cutters, our tractors going through, running into fence lines we don't know about in blackberry thickets. All of that stuff is not great. And you can see this is actually this year, elk herd coming just out of our park into the town of Sedro-Woolley, and so being able to see that when you're going out to your job site is pretty cool. Also, we have the bottom left there, we have beaver problems. I'm sure many of you have beaver problems in some of your projects, but specifically here, we have a couple levee systems on our park, and we have these beaver dams that are being built up, and we use the road, Highway 20, as our water barrier to the south, and that's become a problem with wind action. Some of that's eroding the road prism, and so now we have to address water line issues. So we had to install some height gauges, works with our local tribal entities to make sure that we're still providing those habitats that they need for the fish habitat and what have you, but also reducing the water enough so it's not deteriorating road surfaces, or it was also compromising our levee structures and potentially flooding public roads with our wetland we created. So balancing the needs of our wetland issues, our wildlife, and everything else is another aspect we have to deal with. Bird habitat, I mentioned that slightly. The bittern, is that correct, Brian? The bittern in the grass. So you have all of our horse people who would like a mowed path through our field of grass. Well, then you have our bird people who say we can't mow it until this date in the year when they've already nested. And so very, very fun things we have to deal with, but very beautiful park. We had some recent bear activity there. Black bear, we saw a cougar sighting and I think a bobcat as well over the last couple weeks, months. So very active park, and that alone produces issues for us where people want us to shut the park because they saw a bear or something. Well, they have a right to be there just like us. So it's just a matter of them learning how to coexist. So that's kind of the main things I'm bringing up. I'll pass it off over here. Your turn, JT. Thank you.
Thanks, Joseph. My name is Jim Taylor. I'm with Skagit Trail Builders, and we've been working out there. Discussions on this project for us started back in 2016. And so Art Tufty, that's sitting back there. Art, you want to raise your hand? Yeah, he was a part of the discussions. He was part of the group of us that worked on a trail plan that was presented to Brian. And so the planning and all of that was really kind of happened 2016, 27. The discussion started in 2016, and the work began for us in 2018. Of course, there was a pandemic mixed into it that kept things interesting. But anyway, it's been a great process. You can see the collaborative partners. United General, Beth, we work real closely with her on stuff because they work as our fiscal agent. And so the port, they're a wonderful partner. The city of Sedro-Woolley, they've got property out there also. And so we're all around the table working together. And this teamwork that we've got, I think, is just impressive as heck. And some people say that these organizations and different interest groups can't work together, and that's not been my experience at all. It's been very, very positive.
Push one more time and see if it comes up.
Push one more time in the same button?
Yeah, I think, see if the picture comes up.
Okay, so I guess each slide is being cut in half, or, okay. I don't know what's going on. Okay, sorry. Okay, yeah, that's slide 3. Okay, I'll slip the, okay.
Can you go back one? Yeah, there's no picture, I guess.
Any help in the technology here?
I don't think it'll show up if it won't go
Okay, sorry, there's no pictures.
You jinxed us by saying the technology would fail us.
Yeah. Without testing. Anyway, hopefully everybody has one of our booklets. They're printed out, and if you don't have one, grab it at the end of the table. All of the pictures that are presented in this are shown in the book. So my plan B is there. So anyway, the current project, most of the trails fall on the county property, the 726 acres, and that's what Brian was referring to is under the county's responsibility. And there's a fishing pond that is on the city land, and the hospital site, that's all on the Port property, Port of Skagit property. And all of these different resources are linked either by multi-use trails or by pedestrian trails that are existing pathways and walkways that have been there historically. Okay, our volunteer community, they're out there in all of your communities, I trust. Our experience has been that it's just amazing when you do your outreach through all different sources, whether you're using flyers or through social media or any of those things. These people find their way, and word of mouth, I guess, works to your advantage also. And so anyway, we're averaging, we have 18 sessions a year, typically twice a month. It's like the second and the fourth session of each month. And so we have between 25 and 30 volunteers that will register through our website and show up. We work from 9 to 4, and it's amazing what you can get done in a session with that many people, all carrying their weight and doing the work, and most stay the whole session. And we're fortunate to have people like that show up. You'll see some of the smiling faces there, people that are working, and we give people a t-shirt at the first session that they come on out, and then hopefully they wear it back on their second session. And our repeat attendees ratio is really good, and we ensure that by making certain everybody has a good time. And so we hold our safety meetings. There's a lot of engagement at the sessions. A lot of photos are taken. We have a dedicated person taking photos, and that person takes care of the social media responsibilities and the storytelling that goes with it, and it seems to work. We're having some success there. Over the years now, we put in 3 bridges, and the first one connected the Port of Skagit, the hospital, on over to the farmlands, the county property. And then after that, the pump house bridge is the second picture on down below. And the North Bridge is under construction now, and Art's serving as the contractor on that. And up on the right-hand side, you can see the I-beam. Those are being drug in and will soon be placed. We've got 3 trails. We average about, building in parks, because we transplant all the ferns when there's a trail routing that's established. We'll transplant and all of the ferns, and we put a lot of care into making certain that the trail looks like it was always there. And that just takes longer than going on up and roughing a trail in and going like you would do if you were dealing with timberland or something. So there's the contouring, there's the putting the duff over the edges to make certain that weeds don't come up, and then we even plant grass where in the meadows where we go through after we clear out all the root crowns from blackberries. And in this resource, it's the strength of this resource is the history more than the topography and the ability to build trails. It's a hard place to build trails. There's a lot of clay there, and the amount of water that runs through that place is remarkable. And so a lot of work has to be done to figure out where you can build a sustainable trail. And then you use a lot of rock, you use rock sand to cap with, and over time, they'll look like they've been there forever. And so it's a lot of fun. And after these sessions, we all meet and we have a nice meeting afterwards to discuss what went well, what we could improve upon, and what we're going to do the next session. So it's an engaged process, and it just seems to work. So, thank you.
Well, hello everyone. Thanks so much for the opportunity to talk to you today about some great things that we have going on in Skagit County. How many of you have been to Skagit County before? Oh my gosh, everyone. So you know how beautiful it is and how you're like, okay, how could it be hard to get people out in such an amazing, unique place? We definitely run into challenges. We're so lucky to have these partnerships that are building the infrastructure, and then we're thinking about the future of how are we going to make sure that this is a resource that can continue for well beyond all of us, and we need to do that through stewardship, through maintaining that access and having people be invested themselves in our community and our natural resource. And I think, I want to tell you one thing, is that I am a Skagit Trail Builders volunteer myself. So I have my hospital district side where you're like, why would a hospital district be excited about working on trails? Well, I'm really passionate about it myself, but we recognize with trying to meet people's health needs across the entire lifespan, how much natural resources can play a positive healing role. And so like JT and Brian and Joseph said, like, we're coming full circle, thinking about this being a mental hospital grounds, and now thinking about the different ways that health is incorporated into this natural area. We have several programs that help connect people across the lifespan. How many of you have heard of Hike It Baby? No? Okay, Hike It Baby, just like the graphic up there, is helping people bring newborns through littles out into nature. And it's, you know, less about having the infant experience it, but creating that connection among the people who are there so that you're associating those positive feelings and that the parents can help reap the mental health benefits of spending time outdoors. It's a national program with a Washington chapter, and we applied to become a member. So we actually have a gear library that has like carriers and, oh my gosh, the cutest little rain boots that people can check out. And we help connect people with those types of resources during guided walks. And then for young adults all the way up through older adults, which we found has been a really, really important demographic to engage with our nature prescription program. I'm sure many of you have heard of ParkRx. It's an amazing movement to actually prescribe nature to people, and being a hospital district, you can kind of understand the connection there. But I was really fortunate to, during my internship in my public health program, work on a nature prescription program in Whatcom County, where I was born. And then when I came to work in Skagit County, I was like, how do we not have this program here? We have amazing hospitals and we have amazing natural areas, and so how can we make this connection? Well, the time when we kind of launched it was during COVID, and as you can imagine, our healthcare providers were a little bit busy doing other things, so we didn't go the traditional route of actually working with providers to prescribe time outside. We moved to a model of offering nature walks, so guided nature walks led by AmeriCorps members, actually, in our natural areas, including a Northern State Recreation Area, and working with those different population groups. So having a parent and child group, a working adults group, like scheduling it so times that they could actually come out and join us. And then the older adult group has by far been the most popular one. I think that finding that sense of connection, exploring new places has been really, really popular. And we offer all of that at no charge, although we do accept donations if people wanna provide them. And then Trek for Treasure is like our Gold Star program. It's a summer adventure program that covers both Skagit, sometimes into Whatcom and Island County, that has a series of escalating, I guess you would say, clues and prizes. So you complete 10 hikes over the summer, and then there's like a final challenge. We have more than 1,000 people participate in this summer adventure each year. And it is a paid program to help us maintain it, but it is really remarkable to see how much fun people are having, and the amount of feedback that we get each time is, I would have never gone to this trail, or I made amazing memories with my kids and met new people. Like, we'll have folks do it with, make a team with their coworkers or their family or whoever can make a team together. So it's just been really amazing to see. Each year it grows and grows and grows where it will go in the future, I suppose. I think those are the main programs that I wanted to talk to you about. We've got plenty of time for questions, and yeah, I'm just curious, hearing about everything we've shared, what questions do you have about our trails, Skagit County partnerships? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm curious about basically the funding for those programs, if that is coming from the hospital or if you have other programs. I'm an occupational therapist at the hospital in town here, and so I'm
Nice.
very
So the question was about funding for the programs. So I'm assuming you're talking about the programs that I mentioned. Yeah, although we are a local government, so a local, we have a local government where we do collect tax dollars. Most of that goes towards maintaining the actual hospital. And so we're 90% grant funded for all of our programs. And we've been able to offer those programs primarily through either a paid base, like Trek for Treasure, where we charge a fee for the groups to join, although I would say it's fairly nominal. And then for things like Hike It Baby, we applied for a grant and we utilize AmeriCorps. Washington Service Corps has actually been a good partner for that, which does cost money up front, but then you have dedicated people to be able to lead folks on those walks or, do the actual work, whereas like paying a staff member would not be feasible if we were going to offer them for free. So we have taken in donations for some of that work, but we're always applying for grants. We're actually going to be applying for the No Child Left Inside grant and thinking about how we can sustainably fund these awesome programs. Skagit Nature RX, we have not had any funding specifically for it. Basically, because of my experience in Whatcom County, I was so excited and passionate. I was like, how can we make this work? And so we've had little bits of funding, but I'm hopeful.
And we are, it's all based on partnership.
Yes.
So we are, it's in our strategic plan for the county,
Yeah.
Skagit County. And I've promised the commissioners that it wasn't gonna cost any huge amount from our own coffers, although, one way that we can do that is offer free opportunities to the Vamos Project, who already have a built-in nonprofit or are already getting money. So we're giving them a free park to come in and do some projects at. Skagit Fisheries Enhancement Group come and use our park for releasing salmon and doing work in the riparian. We have opportunities for the school districts on Earth Day. So it's a variety. It's going to be a mosaic patchwork of ways in which we're getting people to the park. And it's in its infancy. This is a vision that we've had for a long time, but now we're getting to the point, and we're really lucky that Beth came from up in Whatcom County that can help kind of pull some of this together too. So we just got really good people. If you talk to the Port of Skagit, just amazing people who care. Skagit Trail Builders, just people who want to see something succeed. So Washington Conservation District that gave us money for our riparian and got students out there helping plant trees. Just have a lot of people who care. So it's been kind of a grassroots effort, but we're trying to pull it together and really organize it to the extent where let's get kids away from screens. We've read about nature deficit disorder. They've got a proactive program through the hospital district. So we're finding a way to just wrap it together and really create a vision that's going to be sustainable into the future. We're just very passionate about getting kids away from screens and what that does for their mental health.
Yeah. Long answer to the question is no direct funding, but I think as the research keeps coming out to support the many aspects of health that are supported through time in nature, that it's easier and easier to connect the dots to funders to say why we need this, why it's a good return on investment and low cost, really. Like if these places already exist, helping people to connect to them, I mean, you're saving a lot of money compared to addressing chronic disease farther down the line. So if you'd like to talk more about any of it, I'm always happy to share. Our contact information is on the end. So did that answer your question?
Yes.
And land trust organizations are great too. They're helping get the Latinx population out at Big Rock. And we plan on having 2 central parks for this. One being Northern State and the other being Big Rock, which we're going to get some grant funding in this grant cycle for. So this is something that, I'm part of a schools foundation too. I want to get them wrapped up into what we're doing and just, we're paying for counselors in schools, which are so necessary, but cuts are happening to them as well. Can we do some proactive work too to get, kids' health in order? And I think it's really important to get people back outside.
Yeah.
And that's the first time someone's called me long-winded, so.
That's a great question. Thank you. What other questions do you have, or what's coming up?
I have actually more of a historical question. When did it stop being used as a hospital? How long did it sit empty before?
1973.
So it was operational for 60 years, but it really, the commissioners signed, I think that we acquired the property in 79 or something like that from the DNR, but it was idle for 20 years. I mean, nothing was happening out there for 20 years before we really, except for a cross country. Dean Taylor was out there running kids around, trails that he would cut himself with a weed whacker. I mean, it was pretty grassroots, and now it's to where it's at. The second we put in a parking lot, people started showing up. It's like, it was amazing. I mean, that's all it took, is we put in a parking lot and one trail, and tons of people. Now you go out there on a rainy day and the parking lot's still full, I mean, it's immensely popular.
Even while we're building the trails, people are like, can we go through yet? And I'm like, well, we've got machines in the way and we're busy, but then they're like, okay, I'm gonna come back tomorrow. And people are just so excited when they see the work they're doing. They stop and thank us, which as a volunteer is amazing. And just knowing that, like, I feel so much pride in feeling like I helped create this and I can go enjoy it. And when we bring people out there, we're like, oh, did you know that Skagit Trail Builders helped build this trail that we're on today? And I think that that's just a really cool vision for, like, ownership,
And if
community
you know,
ownership.
Art's not a big talker, but he's out there 8 hours, and 2 of the hours sometimes are
Yeah.
talking with people, because people just want to talk about what's going on and how they knew the park 10 years ago and all the good things that are happening. So it's cool. It's just great to see. And dog walker, trails are what people want, right? All of our comp plans indicate that people want trails, and you put a trail in and people show up in droves. And we're lucky to have the trail builders. I mean, the timing was right. The port came around, and I said, look, we have a vision to reconnect the port to the, and bring back all these trails that were once existed out there. And they weren't normally excited about, trails that were as flat as these are. They're not as technical, but they got excited about it right away when they saw, how many people were excited, and the partnership and the people we were putting together and the meetings that we started having. They got pretty excited pretty quick and came back and gave us a trail plan in no time at all. So pretty grassroots, really, in a lot of ways. And the timing was just right. We just got all the great players in place, and we're fortunate to have Beth now too as a part of that team.
Did that answer your question? Okay. We said more than the question, but yeah, of the state mental hospitals, most of them have closed. So, yeah, what's your question?
Yeah, sure. Do you have any interpretive signage so people can learn about the history of the city?
That's something we were literally just talking about at lunch. Yeah. Brian, do you want to say more?
We have some interpretive sign out there. It's funny because there was a group here, a vendor that was here, one from Roslyn, and she's from Bellingham, and I can't even, but we had a good conversation. We gave them our card, and we would love, the other thing that happened is some of the patients were unclaimed, they were brought there and forgotten about. And their ashes, 3 years after the hospital closed, they found the ashes in shoe boxes, and so it was very controversial. The newspapers found out, and what are we going to do? Well, there's a cemetery, and there's unmarked kind of little markers, and I think they put a 2-line poetry, and that's all they've done. What can we do to kind of memorialize the patients that were there? That needs to be done, and this group has done some pretty poignant work, and they do beautiful interpretive signs. Getting people who do beautiful interpretive signs is really tough to find. I end up doing the graphics, and it's not very good, and then I have someone else kind of, put some stuff. But they look like they do really good work. So we'd love to engage them. We're getting to the point where that needs to happen, and just to memorialize some of the old buildings so we don't lose, that we have a marker there, and it shows old pictures, and we want all that. But people love interpretive signs. Yeah.
And Brian brought up a book too from Mary McGoffin. And so something with our web-based maps too, the physical maps and kiosks, they're great and they're really good representation stop points, but they can be really hard long-term to maintain. Like if you had a specific artist create something and then later on it needs to be replaced, that could be kind of hard. And so one thing we're trying to incorporate more too with our maps is not only just a more web-friendly map, but also having links to old information, to these books or articles that have information on some of these old buildings that we preserved or had to get rid of, or any of the stories about patrons or anything like that. And I think now that we're getting into kind of a much more advanced stage in the trail making, combining the town of Sedro-Woolley, the Port of Skagit, and Skagit County Parks into a greater park map and a greater park information station. So it's all kind of consolidated and it makes sense rather than the three different entities with their parks that are all touching, doing kind of their own thing. So
That's a great question. Thank you. What else? Oh, sorry, Brian.
And how about any of you with some of what you've done with your trail systems? Do you have any challenges or partnerships that you guys would like to talk about? It'd be interesting to see and hear about some of those kind of things too.
See, my question was actually going to be for the one who doesn't talk so much. And, you know, JT can answer part of that too, is that the process of going out and re-identifying where those trails were, just like get the old blueprints out and hope your feet fall into a hole or something, and how did that process work in finding and identifying the old paths?
Does this roving microphone work? Can I? Yeah.
I will say some of it while we're out building trails, we're like clearing away brush and we're like, oh, look,
Look at this, yeah.
look what we just uncovered. What is this?
Yeah, well, the key things that identified where paths might have been were the old buildings either collapsed or still standing, and then also looking at the old Olmsted original drawing of it. Then going from that, I could look at the Skagit County IMAP and look at LiDAR, and that would show up a lot of terrain features that were completely invisible under blackberries. Some of that was an old road system that the farm used that connected to the hospital grounds. That was easy. And there was also a bridge that had been there, very obvious on a 1969 aerial photo. So that was a huge resource looking at old aerial photos. Then you could uncover the blackberries in those spots and find like bridge abutments, or in one case, a whole building. This particular bridge here goes by a pump house that was buried back in the woods and the bushes. So we uncovered that. And then just imagining where would people go, and then looking there and finding places. But there was also a lot of, I don't know what was here, but it should be here, so we'd fill in that and connect the dots.
Combination of using old and then using LiDAR and having access to current LiDAR for the region, that's a game changer.
Yeah, the LiDAR is,
That makes a big difference.
besides finding old features, it's also great to find the appropriate terrain to put a trail. And this is a very challenging site because it's mostly flat. And building a trail, you want some grade variation to be able to drain the trail and add interest to it. So that's one of the biggest challenges of putting trails on this site, besides the clay, which is another big challenge, and the blackberries, which is a huge challenge.
You can see where the Olmsted Brothers, you know, some of these sites and trails open up to greater views of the local mountain ranges or the DNR lands. You know, the footbridges become a really good viewing station and always attract a lot of people. So all these different footbridges that are going in, not only are they creating an access point across these creeks, but they're also providing a place where people get mesmerized by the water flowing underneath them. So all those things were intentional by the Olmsted Brothers. You know, they use a variety of tools and thought processes and the flow to the farmlands and the escape to the reflection ponds in different places. So pretty incredible work you can see, and when it opened back up and we could see the new trails that Skagit Trail Builders have put in, you can see all of the beautiful work that the Olmsted Brothers did back in those days. And you know, they designed UW campus and the Linfield campus in Oregon and Central Park
And
was
Prospect Park.
Frederick Olmsted, the father primarily. So very, you know, some of the most famous parks and universities and arboretums in the world were created by Olmsted Brothers. So pretty impressive, really. And to be able to take a park that was designed by them, I mean, creates a pretty special place. So it's pretty fun. And those kind of things need to be memorialized. You know, when we talk about interpretive signs and we talk about how we can, I think all those kind of things need to be, you know, we can't lose some of those cool aspects of this park, and that can be done through interpretation.
Yeah.
And we don't want to hold you guys up. We know it's a Saturday afternoon, and there wasn't a lot of people here, so are we looking at
2:07,
about that
we're
time?
good.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
This is our contact information if you'd like,
Thank you.
but we'll also be here. Thank you. Thanks, Art.